In the 1960s and 70s, musician Sonny Bono was a household name. With hit songs like I Got You Babe on the radio and the Sonny and Cher show on TV, he and his wife Cher were the showbiz power couple of the day, reinventing what it meant to be an entertainer.
Tell me, oh fortune teller, will I receive great wealth?
You are short.
When a public and bitter divorce battle divided the couple and their business, Bono had one of the most incredible second acts in Hollywood history. He became a U.S. congressman. But when a sudden and tragic accident took his life at age 62, his estate became a legal battleground. Bono died without a will, which set the stage for his wife and children, his world-famous ex, and a mysterious man making an astounding claim, all grappling over their share of his $2 million fortune.
When Bono passed away, there were many unanswered questions. Did he have a will or trust? Who would oversee his estate? And who did he leave his fortune to?
Husband and wife attorneys and media experts Danielle and Andy Mayoras uncovered the truth behind the legal fight for Sonny Bono's fortune.
It was a legal horror story.
In January of 1998, former pop music star turned U.S. Congressman Sonny Bono was on a Christmas ski holiday in Lake Tahoe with his wife Mary and their two children, 6-year-old Kiana and 9-year-old Cesare.
Sonny was an accomplished skier. He was going down a trail he had been down at least a dozen times, maybe more.
It was an intermediate slope, and Sonny could handle it. Or so he thought.
Mary and their two children skied all the way down the bottom of the trail looking for him, but they couldn't find him at any of the stops along the way.
After 2 hours passed, Mary became concerned.
Mary got in touch with the lodge staff, and she asked them had anybody reported a skier down, anything from any of the hospitals, and of course all the answers were no.
Around 6 p.m., 4 hours after Bono was expected back, word came. Ski Patrol had found the body of a skier who had collided with a tree. Mary took a snowmobile to the scene and made the identification. It was her husband, Sonny Bono.
Mary then had to go down to the lodge and tell their kids that their daddy was gone. That's just devastating.
Sonny was a rock, and he was gone in the blink of an eye.
The police looked into anything that could have led to the accident, even whether drugs had been involved.
After his death, Mary told an interviewer that Sonny struggled with an addiction to Vicodin and Valium. However, in the autopsy report, there were no drugs or alcohol found in his system.
It was the end of a life that was both tumultuous and triumphant, and it would kick off a fortune fight over his estate. Bono's life was a roller coaster that began in Detroit in 1935 when Salvatore Philip Bono was welcomed into the world by his mother, Jean, and his father, Sicilian immigrant, Santo. He was the youngest of 3 children and the couple's only son.
His mom gave him the name Sonny, and it stuck with him for his whole life.
The family lived in Detroit, Michigan, where his mother ran a beauty parlor out of their house. But in 1942, when Bono was 7 years old, they moved to Inglewood, California, where they thought job prospects would be better. In California, Bono went to Inglewood High School and graduated in 1952.
Sonny Bono got into music because of his father, who was an accordion and banjo player. Later in high school, he started tinkering around with congas and little instruments, and he actually won a songwriting contest in 1952 for a song called Ecstasy. And when he performed the song, he later said that that was when he knew he wanted to do music for the rest of his life.
Within a year, he met the beautiful, happy, extroverted Donna Rankin at a drive-in. They fell in love and they got married a couple years later in 1954.
In 1959, the couple had a daughter, Christy. Meanwhile, Bono pursued a career in music while making ends meet with a grab bag of odd jobs.
After high school and into his first few years of marriage, Sonny took on all sorts of odd jobs. He was a grocery bagger, a tug driver, a construction worker, and a meat delivery man, all the time dreaming of making that big break.
While he was working, he was also writing songs and tinkering around with a ukulele and writing lyrics. And in 1955, he actually convinced a DJ to play Ecstasy, the song that he won the contest for, on the radio.
Now, Sonny had always been a go-getter. When he signed up to deliver meat, he asked specifically for the Sunset Boulevard route. Why? Because that's where the record labels were. So he would do all of his deliveries quick, just so he could then stop by, go into the music companies, and talk with people there, finding out about singing and other things in the business. And every once in a while, he'd even get a songwriting gig.
That strategy also earned him his first steady industry job in 1957, a jack of all trades at Art Roup's Specialty Records. He started out earning just $75 a week, but he was finally in the door.
While at Specialty Records, Bono tried moonlighting as a producer. He tried but failed to start his own record label. And then in 1961, he took a job in promotions at Record Merchandising.
Sonny had befriended a young musician named Jack Nietzsche, and together they wrote the song Needles and Pins, which was recorded by Jackie DeShannon and later The Searchers. It became an international hit, and Sonny finally had the acclaim he was looking for songwriting.
One person he got the attention of was music producer Phil Spector.
Phil Spector was a musical genius. He worked with famous groups like the Ronettes, the Righteous Brothers, and Ben E. King. He invented this new style of music called the wall of sound. For Sonny Bono to have access to someone like Phil Spector, it would have skyrocketed his career.
Spector offered Bono a job at his studio, and Bono jumped at the chance.
You've heard that old saying, being a one-man band? That was Sonny Bono.
Sonny Bono, who is total go-getter, basically goes up to Phil Spector and says, you need a West Coast promotions guy. And he creates the position for himself. He more or less turned into Phil Spector's flunky, but, it got him in the door.
It was 1962, and while Bono's marriage to Donna had begun to disintegrate, he was moving ahead in the industry of his dreams. That same year, he met someone who would change his life. It was November, and he went to meet a friend at a coffee shop.
In 1962, Sonny Bono met up with a friend at Aldo's coffee shop, and little did he know it was a surprise double date. And there he met with a young lady named Sherilyn Sarkeesian, Cher, and she told him that she was 18, but she was 16 at the time.
To hear Cher tell the story, she was smitten with Sonny from the moment he walked through the door. She thought he was so cool wearing his fur boots and bowl haircut. The only problem was Sonny wasn't available at the time. Not only was he married, he also had a child.
By his own admission, Sonny Bono was a lousy husband. His wife, Donna, and him were on the rocks for some time, and it was pretty much over by the time he met Cher. They made it official that their 8-year marriage was over in 1962.
Sonny's wife, Donna, filed for divorce. Sonny responded with no contest.
No contest essentially means Sonny wasn't fighting the divorce, he was okay with it. This is very common for couples that divorce amicably.
During that time, him and Cher became closer. At one point, Cher didn't have a place to live, so she moved in with Sonny. It wasn't long before things got a little more than friendly.
Of course, Cher was a teenager and Sonny was 27 years old. So when her mom found out about it, she was not happy. She wished Cher off to Arkansas for 2 weeks on a vacation from men. Of course, within a very short period of time, she was right back in Sonny's arms and living with him again.
While their romance blossomed, Bono took Cher under his wing in the industry. He brought her into Spector's studio to expose her to people in the music business, and it wasn't long before the talented teen was singing backup on albums.
Spector asked Cher to sing a solo on the album, but she was far too nervous to do so. Bono tried to explain to her that this could be her big break, but when she explained how scared she was, he said, "That's okay, your time will come soon enough."
They didn't have much money in those days, but Sonny bought a piano for $82 even though it had a couple broken keys, and he was working on music all the while dreaming up an act for him and Cher to rise to stardom.
In 1964, Bono's efforts to give Cher exposure in the industry worked. Spector suggested producing a single with her. Spector himself wrote the song called Ringo, I Love You, a kind of love letter to the Beatles' drummer.
Spector thought Cher's name wasn't American enough, so he changed it to Bobby Joe Mason for the release, but it didn't go very well.
Cher's voice on the song Ringo, I Love You was interpreted by disc jockeys when it was on the radio as a man singing to another man because Cher's voice was so low. At that time, it was very difficult for the song to become a hit because of that. After that, Phil Spector moved on from working with Cher, but Sonny Bono did not. He was determined to get Cher a singing career.
The two sang and played music together in their free time and at home, and something clicked. Before long, Bobby Joe Mason was left in the dust, and Sonny and Cher were a duo. She was beautiful and had a terrific voice, and he had hustle, so of course it was bound to work.
Sonny thought they would be more marketable if they were married.
So the couple started telling everyone that they had tied the knot.
Sonny was a great businessman. I mean, thinking that they'd be more marketable if they were married, it shows you he wanted to put everything in place so they would achieve stardom. He was really a hustler.
They tried releasing a few songs under the name Caesar and Cleo, but with no luck. In late 1964, they released the song Baby Don't Go, which got some airplay on the radio and led to some paying gigs. It was their first taste of success.
But Bono was business-minded. Now that they'd had a soft hit, he wanted a better deal with the record label. So he renegotiated a deal with Atco Records. They got a $5,000 advance on their next album and a reported 8% royalty on sales. This may not have seemed like much for a breaking artist, but things were about to get interesting. Sonny and Cher were about to hit the big time.
It was a catchy, timeless tune with a repetitive hook that would get stuck in your head, and it became a big hit.
By 1964, musician Sonny Bono's tireless work and dedication helped him pave his own way in the music industry. And by his side was his lover, the budding star and incredible talent, Cher. After having a taste of fame with a soft hit and negotiating a record deal, the duo was on the verge of massive success and their first taste of wealth. Little did they know that this success was laying the groundwork for not one, but two fights over Bono's fortune after his death. Attorneys Danielle and Andy Mayoras have the details of how it all went down.
After several years of consistently hustling, Sonny finally caught his big break when he achieved commercial success with Cher in the singing duo Sonny and Cher.
At this time, Sonny was writing songs nonstop. He was waking Cher up in the middle of the night just to hear her sing stuff that he'd write. This one time, he woke her up in the middle of the night and played her a little melody.
He used to write, and then he would wake me up and go, Cher, come here, I just need you to sing this, which I never wanted to do. I went, oh, Sonny, I'm embarrassed. He said, Cher, Jesus, it's just me. And so it was I Got You, Babe. And I went, I'm going back to bed, this is just nothing.
But it turned out to be their signature hit.
I Got You, Babe was on the debut album Look at Us by Sonny and Cher. The album was released in August 1965 and peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 200. It went gold in September, selling 500,000 copies. The song I Got You, Babe also hit number 1 on both the US and UK charts, staying on the US Billboard charts for 3 weeks.
The label sent them to England to promote their album, but when they got to the hotel, they took one look at the way they were dressed and they were kicked out of the hotel.
The media went in a frenzy, and it was all over the papers the next day. Even though Sonny and Cher didn't know it, supposedly their manager paid $280 to the Hilton to get them kicked out. It was a stunt, and it paid off big time.
When the couple got back to the States, Sonny and Cher were stars, and their song was a hit.
It was a catchy, timeless tune with a repetitive hook that would get stuck in your head, and it became a big hit.
It's interesting because it actually wasn't on the charts for very long, but it's been a timeless hit for over 50 years. Everybody knows I Got You, Babe.
I Got You, Babe is omnipresent in American culture. It's one of the greatest songs ever written. I mean, it's in films like Groundhog Day. Cher sang it as a remake with Beavis and Butthead later on in life. I mean, it's been resurrected so many times.
The duo followed it up 2 years later with The Beat Goes On, which lasted 11 weeks on the Billboard charts, peaking at number 6.
Sonny and Cher went on tour and sold out arenas, and they made TV appearances and even released a line of clothing based on their wild style.
By 1967, they had sold 40 million albums and were living like rock stars. They bought a $240,000 mansion in Bel Air, a house now worth over $20 million, and they attended all the hippest Hollywood parties and premieres.
A lot of their success was thanks to Bono's strategic negotiations for performances and licensing. Anything he could do to get them to the next level, he would.
But by the late 1960s, Sonny and Cher were starting to seem dated.
Music was beginning to change. We've got psychedelic music, anti-war music.
Times were changing, and their music hadn't changed with the times.
The sound that Sonny and Cher had was kind of like this nice, poppy sound. It was, the typical boy loves girl, girl loves boy. You could dance along with it, sing along with it, but the next thing you know, the sound of Sonny and Cher was old-fashioned.
Unfortunately for them, they spent their money almost as quickly as they earned it. They ended the decade with about $300,000 between them. Now that's worth about $2 million in today's dollars.
Bono was going to have to reinvent their act once more if they wanted to keep the money rolling in. Fortunately, he had a few tricks up his sleeve.
Cher originally came to LA to become an actress, so when her music hit a wall, Sonny suggested she give acting a shot.
To help her out, he wrote and produced a movie designed to make her into a movie star.
The movie was titled Chastity, and it was about a sexy hippie runaway and her adventures on the road.
Meet Chastity. She's a bummer, a loser, a cop-out. a dropout.
Bono invested their savings, scrambled for outside funding, and even pawned furniture from their Bel Air mansion for $10,000 to make the film.
As they were finishing the movie, Cher revealed that she was pregnant, and they had their first child, Chastity, in March of 1969.
The movie of the same name debuted 3 months later in June 1969. Sonny and Cher's financial future was riding on its success, and it turned out to be a bad bet. It was a disaster at the box office, panned by critics, and the entire investment Bono had made was gone.
Probably the only good thing that came out of the movie Chastity was that's where they got the name for their daughter.
To make matters worse, Bono hadn't been paying taxes on the couple's earnings for over a year, something the IRS eventually figured out, slapping them with a $200,000 bill.
By the time 1970 rolled around, they had another mouth to feed, but they were almost as broke as they were a decade before when they started out.
But Bono didn't give up. He did what he does best and found a way to reinvent their act, from concert hall singers to nightclub performers, booking Sonny and Cher in the Las Vegas Flamingo Hotel.
At the time, Vegas was the domain of Liberace and Sinatra. Cher and Sonny were different. They appealed to a much younger crowd, and their act was a huge success.
Now, not only were they singers, but they, kind of did the loungy thing. They interacted with the audience, they had comedy skits, and every once in a while would have a guest star.
Sonny envisioned the Vegas thing as a temporary way to pay the bills, but it really took off.
They took their show to hotel lounges and casinos all across the country. The couple toured nonstop, working tirelessly to replenish their bank accounts and stabilize their debts.
This was a really busy time for Sonny and Cher. They have very demanding work schedules, they were taking care of a new baby, and on top of that, they decided to get married in 1969, for real.
And then fate smiled on them. Fred Silverman, then the head of programming at CBS, saw their Vegas show. He felt there was something special about them and their act, and he thought this could really play well on television.
In 1971, just 2 years after their disastrous feature film Chastity, their TV show launched. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour was a primetime hit on CBS.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sonny and Cher.
One of the reasons the show worked so much was the amazing chemistry between Sonny and Cher. They would joke with each other, they showed their personalities, and they were lovable and likable.
The couple's chemistry was the key to the show, with Sonny often playing the well-meaning fool, and Cher being the confident, glamorous star.
We went out on the road, and I got these sensational reviews on the road. I mean, Sonny Bono was fantastic in Vegas, super in New York, and dynamic in Los Angeles, and
Boring at home.
She would make fun of his height, make fun of different things that he would do around the house. Typical husband and wife stuff at the time where, she's making fun of him, he's trying to make fun of her, but it always just wound up falling back on him.
The TV program also served to promote their music, and they were selling out venues around the country, making $60,000 a night. They took in $4 million in 1972. They bought a stately 9-bedroom Holmby Hills mansion from actor Tony Curtis for $750,000. It seemed like they had found their second wind, but at home, not all was hunky-dory.
Sonny and Cher's work schedules understandably took a toll on both of them, and allegedly, Cher really began to resent how controlling Sonny was.
you always have your hair in your eyes.
I cut about, I'm not supposed to say that. I cut about an inch off it because I'm not allowed to.
I don't let her cut it.
By 1974, the Sonny and Cher show had entered its 4th season, and while all of America was loving watching them on TV, behind the scenes, their personal life was unraveling.
Sonny was living with his girlfriend, and Cher was having an affair with record producer David Geffen.
Sonny Bono wrote in his memoir that neither the public nor their child Chastity knew about their marital problems. Chastity was just too young to understand.
Ultimately, it was Cher who pulled the trigger. In 1974, after 11 years together and 5 years of marriage, she filed for divorce.
Their divorce proceedings were ugly.
When Sonny and Cher were married, they had a single enterprise together called Cher Enterprises.
Cher accused Sonny of withholding her share of earnings and took Sonny to court over the custody of Chastity.
And on top of the impending fortune fight, Cher made a stunning accusation.
Involuntary servitude. That's what Cher claimed in her divorce filing against Sonny.
Cher was essentially claiming that Sonny had made her his slave.
By the mid-70s, Sonny Bono had gone from meat delivery man to one of the most recognized and well-paid entertainers in America, alongside his wife, Cher. They had earned, spent, and regained their fortune in only a few short years, and were household names across America. But the lovable couple fans saw on television had fallen apart behind the scenes, and they were soon to be marred in a financial battle. In February 1974, Cher filed for divorce, making a shocking claim.
Involuntary servitude. That's what Cher claimed in her divorce filing against Sonny. That in essence, she was being forced to sing and act and perform without getting fair compensation.
This is a very uncommon reason to cite for a divorce and has been associated with Cher since she did so.
Years later, Sonny talked about how the divorce, and this allegation in particular, really affected him. He said, quote, "I recoiled in shock. Cher's charge was a callously legal way of saying that she had been my slave, not my wife, my lover, my best friend, my inspiration, or the mother of our child, but my slave."
This absolutely sent a message to all across America that she felt she was being treated unfairly.
This was a very bad divorce. They were both hurt and angry, and this divorce was very much out there in the public.
They had been on primetime TV as a married couple for 4 years, so the divorce was big news. It was everywhere.
During their divorce proceedings, Sonny and Cher continued to live together. However, they were both seeing other people at the same time. This created a tense environment at home. At one point, Cher, Sonny, and Sonny's girlfriend were all living under the same roof. One evening, Cher and David Geffen, with the help of some detectives, changed all the locks on the residence, leaving Bono stranded outside.
But it wasn't just hurt feelings that they had to sort out. There was the matter of child custody and the fortune they'd made together.
When Sonny and Cher were married, they had a single enterprise together called Cher Enterprises. This was the entity that he had set up that owned all of the royalties for their TV show and their music. Cher was shocked when she learned that Sonny owned 95% of Cher Enterprises.
You have to wonder exactly what was going on here. I mean, for Sonny to have 95% of the royalties, she did cite involuntary servitude in the divorce documents, and it really makes you think, was he controlling her in the business world as well as in their personal life?
Cher sued to get alimony and her fair share of the profits from the work they did together in what would be the first of many legal battles regarding Bono and his money.
What she was saying in the divorce, as well as telling the world, was that she was owed wages by Sonny. He was taking advantage of her in business.
It's really not that unusual to have business arrangements where one person has a much greater control in it than the other. However, here, the unusual aspect is that they were married and they were equal contributors to this enterprise.
Cher was younger than Sonny and she was less experienced. It seemed like Sonny did take the lead when it came to negotiations and business, but at the same time, she wasn't getting paid what she deserved.
Because of the divorce and this being a marital asset, she had strong legal grounds to go in and fight for 50-50.
When the couple finalized their divorce in 1975, Sonny was reportedly ordered to pay Cher $25,000 per month for 6 months, $1,500 per month child support, $41,000 in attorney fees, her continuing royalties arising out of the music they wrote and performed together, and royalties from the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour TV show.
By the time the divorce was settled, the Sonny and Cher show was long over, having ended at the beginning of its 4th season. Cher's relationship with David Geffen had ended too, and musician Greg Allman took his place.
3 days after she and Sonny divorced, she married musician Greg Allman. That marriage only lasted 9 days.
Bono followed up the devastating divorce with a short marriage to actress Susie Coelho. Their marriage only lasted a few years.
In the years after Sonny and Cher's 1975 divorce, both their careers stalled.
This prompted them to give their professional relationship another shot. So in 1976, a year after their divorce, Sonny and Cher decided to give their old TV show a new life.
Well, I really like Sonny and Cher, especially Sonny.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think they're kind of strange. I mean, look, Sonny used to be married and he had a daughter, right? And then he married Cher and then they had a daughter.
Yeah.
Then they got a divorce and she married this guy and they just had a son. But meanwhile, Sonny and Cher are still working together. You know, I'm not sure if I approve of that sort of thing.
When the original show was canceled because of the divorce, it was still doing really well. So CBS, along with Sonny and Cher, decided to give it another try. This time, they were calling it the Sonny and Cher Show.
Unfortunately, their on-camera chemistry couldn't survive divorce.
The barbs and insults that worked so well while the couple was still married just wasn't the same after their divorce. In fact, Bono said that joking to audiences about their divorce wasn't the classiest thing in the world.
The new show only lasted 2 seasons, and it would be the last time that the two of them worked together professionally.
Do you ever think to yourself, gee, maybe we could get back together?
As in what capacity?
Get married again.
Well, I don't know. Mary wouldn't feel too good about that right now.
My wife wouldn't like that.
Without Cher by his side, Bono reached an all-time low.
Cher's star was really beginning to grow and grow and grow. She became a major singer, also an actress, putting on sold-out concerts. Whereas for Sonny, he was making guest spots on Love Boat and Fantasy Island.
By 1979, he felt that he was pretty much past his prime and it was time to move on to a different direction.
So instead of just sitting back going, I'm just still gonna be a singer no matter what, he opens up a restaurant, which becomes very successful because people are going, hey, that's Sonny Bono's restaurant. Let's go there, he might be there and we can get a picture.
Bono's Italian restaurant opened in Palm Springs in 1985 and was the jumpstart he needed to build a new life for himself in the storied desert community.
At the time, Palm Springs was a legendary hangout for the likes of Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe. But by the time Sonny got there, it had lost some of his luster.
The desert community still had the amenities of a leisure town: golf courses, pools, and country clubs. The restaurant became a local favorite.
Sonny was in his 50s when he went to Palm Springs and met Mary Whitaker. Even though she was 26 years younger than him, they had a great relationship, and they ended up getting married and having 2 children. And then they ran the family restaurant together.
Little did Mary know, just over a decade later, she'd be dealing with the financial debacle of Sonny's estate. In 1988, Sonny and Mary's son Cesare was born, and a twist of fate led Bono down a surprising new career path.
Sonny was looking to expand his restaurant and he wanted to put in a bigger sign. So he went to City Hall to apply for a permit and was told no. He was incredulous. He kept asking, but he was stuck in the bureaucracy.
Then he had trouble with his house. He wanted the city to fix a retaining wall, but they said it was his problem. He got fed up and decided he was going to run for mayor.
Eventually, the only solution I could come to get it done was to run for mayor and fire the person that I had been dealing with.
He ran as a Republican, and his platform was based on bringing in new business to the town and putting it back on the map as a prestigious vacation destination like it was in the 1950s.
I'm running for mayor because I think this city needs somebody who's honest and who can lead it and who shoot from the hip.
He won the race, becoming mayor of Palm Springs in 1988.
He ran a very successful campaign and in fact was elected by the widest margin in the history of the state.
He received 4,842 votes. His nearest competition got just 2,498 votes.
A lot of people looked at it as a joke. This is Sonny Bono, he's a clown, whatever. He won. And that started Sonny Bono's career in politics.
The 4-year position paid just $15,000 annually. It wasn't much to Bono, who ran a successful restaurant and still got residuals from his music, but he enjoyed being mayor.
Sonny Bono finds out that you can get things done as mayor, and he enjoys being effective. As a result, Sonny Bono decides to take his passion for public service and take it to Washington.
Bono's first attempt at national politics was a bid to capture California's U.S. Senate seat. In 1992, he ran in the Republican primary but lost the nomination. The seat ultimately went to Democratic newcomer Barbara Boxer, who would go on to serve for 24 years in that role. But the loss didn't discourage Bono.
After he loses the nomination for Senate, Bono decides he'd get more traction closer to home, and he runs for the U.S. House of Representatives in 1994, and he wins.
As a Republican, he appealed to the older, more conservative base of the Palm Springs district. Now he had a position in Congress, making $130,000 a year to enact the will of the people. In Congress, Bono had to prove himself yet again.
Shortly after arriving in Washington, Bono said that his colleagues would soon find out that he knew a little more than they thought he did, and he got right to work.
The Bono family's financial nightmare was just a few short years away, as Sonny Bono was continuing his political career as a U.S. congressman representing California's 44th District in 1995. He was also a former mayor of Palm Springs and fondly remembered as part of a legendary entertainment duo. But as his venture into politics unfolded, tragedy would strike, creating a messy legal battle over his fortune and drumming up some long-forgotten remnants of Bono's past. Attorneys and estate experts Danielle and Andy Mayoras break it down.
Shortly after arriving in Washington, Bono said that his colleagues would soon find out that he knew a little more than they thought he did, and he got right to work.
Sonny's run in politics was just like his run in music. When he first started out, no one took him seriously. No one thought that he was really going to succeed.
So when Sonny Bono gets to Washington, his colleagues in the House have somewhat of a similar view of him as the public at large, that this guy's an entertainer and he's not to be taken seriously.
It's an opinion that Bono worked hard to change.
There were some reports that Sonny's Capitol Hill colleagues called him Mr. Cher or Sonny Bonehead, but he said it was a hill he'd have to climb and he just pushed forward.
He works on legislation that will extend the royalties period for musical artists, and clearly he has an expertise in this area.
But his conservative positions weren't without controversy. He supported the 1996 Defense of Marriage Act, which denied federal recognition of same-sex marriages.
His position alienated Chastity, who'd come out as gay years earlier. In fact, Chastity accused him of pandering to his conservative colleagues.
In all, Bono sponsored 16 bills, and his priority was to reduce bureaucracy. By 1998, after 3 years in Congress, Sonny Bono had proven himself to his fellow legislators. But it was then that tragedy struck, and his fortune entered limbo.
He was hitting new strides and finding more success. That's what made the accident on the ski slopes even more traumatic.
Sonny Bono's death was met with an outpouring of grief and sympathy.
When the news of Sonny's death broke, many were devastated. The flag over the U.S. Capitol was flown at half-mast that day.
Hundreds attended his funeral, including former President Gerald Ford, House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and sitting congressmen, as well as many other friends.
Sonny was survived by his wife Mary, his 2 ex-wives, and his 4 children.
Cher was reportedly devastated by the news and gave a moving eulogy at the request of Sonny Bono's family.
Some people thought that Son wasn't to be taken seriously because he allowed himself to be the butt of the jokes on the Sonny and Cher show. What people don't realize is that he created Sonny and Cher. He wanted to make people laugh so much that he had the confidence to be the butt of the joke. I can't go through the rest of my life without you.
I just remember watching her at the funeral when it was on television, and she was just, crying, of course, and just talked about how important Sonny was to her life.
But incredibly, what Sonny Bono didn't leave behind was a will.
Maybe Sonny didn't do a will or trust because he just assumed everything would go to his wife, Mary. This is a very common mistake that a lot of people make. But it doesn't matter if you've been married 5 months or 50 years. There's no inherent right for your spouse to receive everything from your estate. It just doesn't work that way.
If you pass away without a will, then the laws of the state that you live in will determine who receives your assets and when.
At the time of his death, Bono and his wife Mary had been married for 12 years. Twice as long as his more famous marriage to Cher.
Mary was left to pick up the pieces without the help and guidance of a will. In order to receive the assets left in his estate, she would have to go through a vigorous legal process. Mary hired an attorney and filed a petition for probate.
Mary should have been allowed time to grieve for her husband, but instead she had to deal with the probate court, she had to deal with caring for her young children, creditor claims, paparazzi, you name it.
But Mary had to press on to settle the estate.
Mary filed paperwork with the court informing them that Sonny had $1,550,000 as personal property and $150,000 as Sonny's annual income. Mary was essentially saying to the public that Sonny was worth $2 million. This isn't information that you particularly want made public.
Anytime you have large sums of money tied up in probate, people can come out of the woodwork looking for a handout, and it's especially problematic when the person who died didn't have a will.
For most people, it doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire or you have a very modest estate, 9 times out of 10, a trust is going to be better. A trust is a legal document that you can create to control your assets both during your lifetime and after you pass away. If Sonny would have used a trust, it would have allowed him to keep his affairs outside of the public eye and just within his family.
Keeping things quiet was impossible by that point because the estate value was publicly disclosed in the proceedings.
It's never an easy process. This is especially true when there are multiple creditors who come looking for money owed by the person who died.
And it seemed that Bono owed some money.
The first of Mary's battles against creditors began with Kent Stevens, who sought $53,000 owed to him by Sonny. And an attachment to the claim was a contract for $25,000 with an interest rate of 9% to be added on every year if it wasn't paid for.
The initial loan note that Stevens presented was dated 1984, 14 years earlier, and the interest added up to $53,000.
Sonny owed more in interest than the actual loan was worth itself.
Then another creditor came looking for a payout, one that shocked everyone involved: Santo Bono.
Sonny's own father, Santo, sought money from the estate. The claim stated that on Christmas Day, 1996, Santo had made a personal loan to Sonny in the amount of $30,000. Of course, you have to wonder the fact that this was dated on Christmas Day. Could it have been a Christmas gift?
The check was written at a time when Bono was running for office, so it's possible that his dad was just helping out his overextended son.
When you're talking about family members like a father loaning money to a son, normally you'd expect the family to simply work it out amongst themselves and not have to go through the formal claim process.
It seemed that Bono's father didn't think he'd get the money back without filing an official claim.
If a proper claim isn't filed in time, the person who's owed the money loses the right to pursue it altogether.
But the Christmas loan was the tip of the iceberg, because soon after, Bono's famous ex-wife Cher and her team of lawyers would bring a lawsuit against the estate. She would make a claim not just on money Bono made when he died, but money that their music would continue to earn.
It appeared on the surface that Cher was being greedy. Someone worth $300 million making a claim against the estate of her late husband?
But when you dive beneath the surface, Cher's claim was more complicated. What she wanted was money she felt she was owed from music deals struck long ago.
Cher filed a formal claim against the estate in order to protect her rights to recover royalties that she was owed. Really, Cher had no choice but to file the claim in the 90s to make sure that those hard-earned rights were protected going forward.
The court records show that Sonny's share of the music and TV royalties exceeded $1.6 million, which means that Cher's share would have been comparable.
Bono's portion would continue to flow as well, now to Mary. With Bono gone, Mary would be the one to make sure everything was handled properly in the arrangement between Bono and Cher.
We know that Cher did not receive any money from the estate for her claim. Rather, she received an agreement that the royalties owed to her would continue to be paid to her. What this means is that Mary was able to document that Cher had been receiving her fair share of the music and TV royalties from Sonny and would continue to do so from the estate into the future.
Cher and Mary agreed to cooperate to make sure that the royalties were fairly paid not only to Cher but also to Sonny's children.
Cher and Mary's cooperation would extend more than 10 years.
In 2009, Cher filed a lawsuit on behalf of both of them against Universal Music Group, claiming that they were owed $5 million in royalties from 2 compilation albums that included Sonny and Cher's songs.
A spokesperson for Universal Music said it was a meritless claim, but we never found out publicly what the settlement was.
After resolving the lingering issues with Cher, Mary Bono may have thought she was out of the woods. But actually, it was just the beginning. Sonny Bono was an entertainment legend and United States congressman when he died unexpectedly in 1998. His widow Mary handled his estate, including a surprise claim from a man named Sean Machu.
On July 2, 1998, a man named Sean Machu filed a legal claim against the estate, claiming that he was the son of Sonny Bono.
Machu was a 35-year-old actor living in Marina del Rey, California, born on April 10, 1964. His mother was dancer and actress Mimi Machu.
Mimi Machu rose to fame in the 1960s as a dancer on Hollywood A Go-Go. She also was an actress in movies like Psych Out with Jack Nicholson, as well as Head when she played Lady Pleasure in a movie that featured the Monkees.
Sonny Bono and Mimi Machu traveled in the same circles back in the 1960s. That's where they met, and according to Sean Machu, that's when they started their affair.
Sean's claim had traction from the beginning because of Sonny's autobiography, The Beat Goes On, which was written in 1991, 7 years before Sonny passed away. And the timing of the affair with Mimi lines up for the time when Sean was born.
According to Sonny Bono's autobiography, he and Mimi Machu only had sex one time, and that was while he was dating Cher.
Bono's autobiography mentions that he had a relationship with Mimi around the time that she would have conceived Sean, which was around 1963. Reportedly, when she told him that she was pregnant, he made a cash settlement to her of an undisclosed amount of money. Keep in mind that this was 1964 when Sonny didn't have very much money, so the payout couldn't have been very much.
But no paternity test was ever done. The whole matter had been forgotten until Bono's death.
So while Sean was a surprise, it certainly was plausible that he was Sonny's child.
But speculation isn't enough for a legal claim.
When someone files a claim against an estate claiming to be an illegitimate child, there's a 2-step process they have to go through legally. First, they have to convince the court that they were acknowledged by the father during their lifetime with clear and convincing evidence.
Incredibly, Sean showed the court a piece of evidence that convinced the judge his claim could be legitimate.
Sean actually came to the table with a legal document to prove he was Sonny's child. It was a birth certificate.
Machu's birth certificate listed his date of birth as April 10, 1964, and lists his mother as Mimi Georgette Machu, and his father, Salvatore Bono, a 29-year-old self-employed record producer.
This information was never made public, and it had to be a shock to Mary when she found out.
So there it was in black and white, or was it? I mean, it really doesn't prove anything. Sean came and showed this birth certificate, but his mom could have added Sonny's name. It doesn't mean that he's the actual father. And of course, the document could have been forged as well. But it did give the court a reason to entertain what he had to say.
Now, in this case, Machu had enough evidence in his favor to get past the first hurdle and focus the court in on the DNA testing.
The next step was to perform a DNA paternity test.
So it all came down to DNA testing. It came down to science. Legally, it didn't matter whether or not Sonny Bono officially recognized Sean as his son. It simply mattered, did they have that biological relationship as father and son.
Mary said she would not contest Machu's claim to a percentage of the estate of approximately $2 million if the DNA test proved Bono was his father.
We don't know what the result actually was, but what we do know is Sean and his attorney went away quickly and quietly. So either he was Sonny's child and he was paid off, or he simply wasn't Sonny's child.
Now, normally what you would have expected to see if the DNA results came back favorably to Sean is that he would have gotten an equal share to the others. Now again, with the confidential settlement that they may have reached, that wasn't necessarily the case. We know from the court records that Sean Machu was never formally recognized as an heir of Sonny Bono.
It really makes you wonder, if Sean was Sonny's child, why did he wait until Sonny had passed away in order to claim money from his estate? Why didn't Sean or Mimi ever seek child support from Sonny?
When it came time to divide the assets, any property that was in Mary and Sonny's name as husband and wife automatically went to Mary. None of this went through the probate process. For the assets that did go through the probate process, creditors were paid off the top, and then the rest was divided, a third to Mary, a third to Sonny's children from prior marriages, and then a third to their 2 minor children.
Was this really what Sonny would have wanted? Well, we don't know because he never put his wishes in writing. If he would have done even a simple will, any good estate planning attorney would have been able to exclude any unnamed children. Or if Sonny wanted to provide for Sean and Sean was his child, he could have provided for him in the document. But we'll never really know what Sonny's true wishes are because the state that he lived in created that will for him.
After his estate was settled, Bono and his work continued to be the focus of Mary Bono's life for years to come.
Mary successfully ran for her husband's congressional seat. She was there for 15 years. She also continued to run the family restaurant that she and Sonny had before they got into politics.
In the end, Sonny Bono's estate was settled, but he could have avoided so much stress for his family if the proper planning was done. Sonny, like so many people, didn't even do a simple will. 2/3 of Americans don't do a simple will. They procrastinate, and that's exactly what Sonny did.
Sonny Bono is the only member of Congress ever to have had a #1 single on the US Billboard Top 100 chart. His accomplishments speak for themselves, but that doesn't excuse his procrastination when it came to making out a will. He put his family through a grueling probate process and cost them a small fortune in legal fees.
Bono's legacy didn't end with his estate. His music and his legislation have left a lasting impression on the world. In that way, his beat still goes on.